Venezuelan opposition parties present its candidates for the parliamentary elections. China demands India to stop the dangerous actions of military provocation committed by its troops on Chinese territory. Africa reported over 31,000 deaths from COVID-19, according to the briefing from the Center for Disease Prevention. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Laura Palmeiro. Opposition parties that are part of the Democratic Alliance present the candidates for the parliamentary elections on December 6 in Venezuela. The representatives of the political parties stress that the Democratic Alliance is the only one at the national level. They highlighted that the alliance is the result of a detachment of the personal interest that seeks to win the next elections. They called Venezuelan people to vote in order to achieve a change in the country. In Haiti, demonstrators continue on the streets to protest against the insecurity and the many acts of violence perpetrated by armed gangs. The students and social movement in Port-au-Prince stress their rejection against the frequent acts of violence and criticize the inaction of the government. After the killing of a prominent lawyer, the demonstrations multiplied, sparked by the growing insecurity that affects all social sectors. The young President Moïse suggested using the army to control the bands. However, experts warn that the intervention of armed forces has a risk of more collateral damages. In Jamaica, Prime Minister Andrew Holness used his post-inauguration speech on Monday to inform the shift in how he would manage his emerging cabinet, suggesting he would give back more power and authority to his ministers while demanding accountability. Holness, who was being sworn in a King's House for the third time in 9 years, also emphasized that he will not tolerate missteps and the flooding of a good governance on the promise of circumventing bureaucracy.
Andrew Michael Holness, do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Jamaica, that I will uphold and defend the Constitution and the laws of Jamaica, and that I will conscientiously and impartially discharge my responsibilities to the people of Jamaica. Affirmed this the 7th day of September 2020. As a government, we will put in place the necessary measures to bring this present spike under control and keep you safe, while not unduly affecting your livelihood. However, as we enter this new phase of the pandemic, the greater emphasis must be on the responsible behavior of the individual. Jamaica does not have the reserve of resources to always be locking down our economy. We must now all learn to live with and protect ourselves from the SARS-CoV-2 virus and the COVID-19 disease it causes. We cannot rely on fear, panic, and stigma to get temporary compliance, but on the conscious effort on the part of every Jamaican that as we go about our daily lives, working, worshiping, shopping, and socializing, we must follow the established infection prevention and control protocols.
And let's go to Barbados, where the Chief Executive Officer of the Cash-Strapped Transport Board, Fabian Wharton, explained about the improvements that are being made in the management and operations of the transportation sector.
It is a situation where you have a declining ridership in terms of overall in the market. The market is contracting a bit. Even when the bus fares went up to $350, where people were expecting this huge increase in revenue across the sector. That did not happen because some people opted to walk, some people opted to drive, some people thought it was more financially better for them than to go and get a loan and buy a car. So the actual market shrunk a little. And then with COVID now, the market and the way how the economy is, so the revenues are under pressure. And that is why we are spending so much time on the expense side, because we know the revenues is under severe pressure.
During his speech for the Independence Day in Brazil, former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva denounced the government mismanagement of the COVID-19 pandemic.
It was possible, yes it was, to prevent so many deaths. We are on hands of a government that does not value human life and does not care about death. An insensitive government, irresponsible, that did not respect the measures of the World Health Organization and turned the COVID-19 in a mass destruction weapon.
Former Brazilian president also accused the current president Jair Bolsonaro of betraying the country's sovereignty by obeying the orders of the United States forces.
The current government subordinates Brazil to the United States and humiliates us, our soldiers and diplomats, putting us to face embarrassing situations and still threatens to involve the country in military actions against our neighbors.
In Cuba, the representatives of the World Health Organization and the Pan-American Health Organization have expressed confidence in the country's COVID-19 vaccine candidate, as well as their willingness to create mechanisms to facilitate access to the vaccine for countries in the region and the world. Our correspondent Nayara Tardo has the story.
The Director General of the WHO, Dr. Tedros Adhanom, stressed recently the need to guarantee universal access to COVID-19 vaccines once they are available, for which the international body has launched the COVAX initiative, which will give access to some 170 countries, with the exclusion of the United States, whose government abstained from joining the project. Since the Cuban government has expressed its willingness to make its vaccine available to the countries of the region and the world, we came here, the WHO headquarters in Cuba, to learn about the details of these mechanisms.
Through the mechanisms that are already being defined for access to this vaccine, through the COVAX mechanism, as it is being called, where the WHO, in coordination with Gavi, the Global Vaccine Fund, and CEPI, which is a coalition that is supporting the production of vaccines, there will be agreements with countries in order to ensure access to these vaccines. This is the distribution mechanisms that the countries of the region, countries of the world in fact, will be able to apply in order to guarantee at least 20% of vaccines for 20% of their population.
Leaders of the Finlay Institute for Vaccines have presented the progress demonstrated by the COVID-19 vaccine candidate, Soberana 01, whose clinical trials in humans started on August 24th and have shown encouraging results for the scientific community of the island.
Once the vaccine is defined, we wanted to have successful results. That's what we want. Once the vaccine is authorized by the WHO, it will be a vaccine that will go to the revolving fund of the region. The revolving fund for vaccine procurement, as it is called, is the purchasing mechanism that the Pan-American Health Organization has had over 40 years. Most of our countries, including Cuba, are part of the revolving fund. So once the vaccine is certified, it will be available through the Pan-American Health Organization's revolving fund, which is what we want, and for populations in our region to access its production. Hence the importance, the joy that we have in the region that Cuba has a vaccine candidate, and even a second candidate on the way, so that we have the availability of a vaccine produced in the Americas region.
This September 11th, once its phase 1 is completed, the vaccine candidate will enter the next phase with a sample size of 676 volunteers, including the 40 from the initial period. The research should be concluded in all its phases in January 21, and it is expected that the vaccine will be ready by February and available to the 11 million Cubans on the island. And later, with the support of the WHO and PAHO, it will be made available to the peoples of the region and the world.
Nayara Tardo, TeleSUR, La Habana.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. China demands India to stop the dangerous actions of military provocation committed by its troops and immediately withdraw its troops, which illegally trespass on Chinese territory. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian said on Tuesday. Speaking at a press briefing in Beijing, Zhao said the Indian troops illegally crossed the line of actual control at the western section of the China-India border into the Shenpao mountain region near the southern bank of Pangong Salt Lake. During the operation, the Indian troops outrageously fired warning shots at Chinese border defense patrol personnel who went forward for negotiations, forcing them to take countermeasures to stabilize the situation, according to Zhao. He said the Indian troops' acts are severe military provocation that must be stopped immediately.
This move of the Indian side constitutes a serious violation of the related agreements reached by both sides. It escalated regional tensions and can easily lead to misunderstandings and misjudgments. The move is a severe military provocation of a very bad nature. We demand the Indian side to immediately stop its dangerous actions, withdraw the personnel that crossed the line of actual control, strictly control its front-line troops, seriously investigate and punish the personnel who fired the provocative shot, and ensure that similar incidents will not happen again.
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange returned to the Old Bailey Criminal Court in London on Tuesday on the second day of his legal hearing to avoid being extradited to the United States. As Assange's father, John Shipton, and lawyer Jennifer Robinson entered the building, WikiLeaks editor-in-chief Christine Ramson accused the U.S. government of using the Old Bailey as a secret court. He said he was outraged but not surprised they wanted to keep proceedings hidden behind closed doors. A group of protesters were standing outside the court, holding banners and shouting, "Free Julian Assange." A British judge on Monday rejected a request to delay his extradition hearing until next year to give his lawyers more time to respond to U.S. allegations that he inspired with the hackers to obtain classified information.
In my mind, the Americans are basically using this court as they are used to use the courtroom in the spy courts in the Eastern District of Virginia. They can have their way any way they want, and they always get what they want in that courtroom. We know that. Not a single case has been submitted there where the defendant has won. Not a single one. I think it's sending a signal that there is no desire for this to be in the public eye. And when you look at all the proceedings here until now and what is being done here in the courtroom, I totally understand why they want to keep this basically hidden behind closed doors, but it should be an outrage.
The Chinese people have never flinched, but have met with tough tests and challenges in the face of a ferocious epidemic of COVID-19, said Chinese President Xi Jinping on Tuesday. She, also General Secretary of the Communist Party of China Central Committee and Chairman of the Central Military Commission, spoke highly of the common Chinese people's courage when addressing an awarding ceremony to commend role models in China's fight against COVID-19 epidemic held at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. At the awarding ceremony, renowned Chinese respiratory disease expert Xiong Nangshan received the Medal of the Republic, the highest state honor. The national honorary title, the People's Hero, was conferred on 3 other outstanding medical professionals.
Faced with a ferocious epidemic, the Chinese people have never flinched. Instead, we have met the tough challenge head-on, writing yet another inspiring and heroic chapter in our history. The Chinese nation has gone through trials and tribulations, but has always been able to emerge. It is never because of any savior. It is because of our numerous ordinary people stepping forward and forging ahead against all odds.
The Secretary General of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development said on Tuesday that the world economy will shrink 6% this year as the coronavirus pandemic triggers the worst global recession in nearly a century. Angel Gurria said this figure was based on just a wave of the virus. A second wave could see GDP fall by 7.5%, he said. The 37 members of the OECD include advanced economies such as the US and Western European and Nordic countries, as well as emerging economies like Mexico, Chile, and Turkey.
The response of all countries is still being developed because we are right in the middle of this crisis. Actually, we came up with projections for world growth, and in 2020, growth, or rather the collapse of the size of the world economy, will be minus 6%. In terms of global growth in 2020, and this is in the case of a wave only of the pandemic. And so, if there is a second wave, we could expect a global decrease of the GDP of minus 7.5% in 2020. So basically, between minus 6% and minus 7.5%. We'll see.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Africa began this week with 31,312 deaths from COVID-19, according to the briefing from the Center for Disease Prevention released on Monday. The report also adds that the number of COVID-19 cases since the onset of the pandemic amounted 1,301,477 COVID-19 patients. Worldwide, India rose to the second position in the list of 10 countries most affected by the pandemic, which, according to data from Johns Hopkins University, keeps the United States occupying the first position with 6,270,000 afflicted and 188,941 deaths. Now, India, which has been breaking its infection records for 3 consecutive days, reported over 90,000 new COVID-19 cases, accumulating 4.2 million patients, including over 71,000 deaths. Indian officials on Tuesday said some coronavirus patients from vulnerable indigenous tribes in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands had recovered. Rajesh Bhushan, Secretary at India's Health Ministry, said 6 tribal people had been treated in hospitals but were later discharged and returned to their homes on the island. There has been international concern over the possible impact of the COVID-19 on isolated tribes amid fears they might be more susceptible to the virus than people living in less remote areas of the world. Indian officials also said the country was considering manufacturing a Russian vaccine and conducted phase 3 trials after a request from Moscow.
India and the world indeed, because India can manufacture that vaccine in such large and significant quantities, which is good for Russia, good for India, and also excess capacities and specific part of that capacity can be offered to the rest of the world. And on the regulatory front, the Indian scientists have looked at the data. In any case, now it is in the public domain. And yes, there would be a need for phase 3 trials in normal course of things. And if that is required, we are paving way that such a phase 3 trial or bridging studies as required, as per science and as per the requirements of regulatory system of India, would be facilitated by the government of India. So we are working in partnership with this vaccine candidate for manufacture as well as for trial and as well as for regulatory facilitation in the spirit of partnership and in the spirit of science for humanity.
Egyptian citizens will go to the polls this Tuesday on the first day of 2 days that elect a new Senate. All the process will be under strict measures in order to avoid the spread of COVID-19. A total of 11,500 electoral colleges will be installed and receive this Tuesday and on Wednesday the vote of 63 million people who make up the electoral pattern. The health authorities and measures established as an obligation for the assistant electors have the objective of preventing the COVID-19 spread, according to the National Electoral Authority. South Africa's economy shrank by more than half in the second quarter as business activities in the country ground to a halt as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, the National Statistics Agency has said. South Africa's economy contracted by 51% in 2012 compared with the same period of 2019, statistics from South Africa said in statements. The unprecedented contraction came after a strict lockdown imposed on March 27 that caused most of the economic activity to cease. It was driven largely by steep declines in the construction, manufacturing and mining sectors, where activity shrank by up to 70%. South Africa's economy was already in recession, and it is the second time in 2 years. Boko Haram jihadists killed 10 civilians in attacks on 3 villages in restive northeast Nigeria, local security official has said. The attackers did not use guns, so it's not attract troops in nearby town, said the militia member Ibrahim Liman. The area has been the target for repeated suicide and gun attacks. Boko Haram fighters have stepped up attacks on farmers as they work in their fields. The jihadist conflict, which started in 2009, has killed 36,000 people and displaced around 2 million in northeast Nigeria. And in Somalia, the insurgent group Al-Shabaab attacked this Tuesday a city that is located in the Mogadishu's northeast. Several sources ensure that a group of insurgents that sworn allegiance of the Al-Qaeda launched several attacks against the city of Balad, at the same time broke into local government offices and other establishments. During the events, at least 14 militants died and 1 soldier of the government. Also, 7 civilians were injured. After the event, the security forces took back the control of the city and are removing the explosives left by the extremist group. And we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Remember, you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Laura Palmeiro. Thank you for watching.